31 years ago this week, a shot was fired in Mississippi, assassinating civil rights activist Medgar Evers. His widow, Myrlie Evers, vowed that night she would not rest until her husband's murder was placed behind bars. In the 3 decades since, Evers has raised 3 children, completed college, and served as a Los Angeles public official managing a $1 billion budget. On January 5th, 1994, Byron De La Beckwith was convicted of Medgar Evers' death and sentenced to life in prison. We're pleased to have Myrlie Evers join us now to talk about not only her own life since the assassination of her husband, but a new HBO film, which will talk about the bringing to trial of Byron De La Beckwith. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to have you here. Tell me about you in terms of what happened to you after this, and with so much of your history there in Mississippi, you leave Mississippi and go to California, and as I said, have a distinguished career there. I left out a lot of things that are to your credit, including time with ARCO and other places.
Yes.
Why California? Why leave Mississippi with so much of what had shaped you there?
It was important to leave Mississippi. The memories were too strong in that house. I did not want to live any other place in the state. But if we go back to that night that Medgar was assassinated, I think of all of the blood that was on the carport. The bullet that entered his body, went through a couple of walls in our home, left a large dent in the refrigerator and fell over to the counter, plus all of the good times, the good memories. Our children were having great difficulty adjusting to their father's death. One child had difficulty eating and retaining the food. Another would not talk. The youngest child just kind of stared, and it was too much for me. I moved to California because Medgar had said, if we ever leave Mississippi, which I doubt we will, we would go to California. And at that point in my life, I did everything that I thought he would have wanted me to do or approved of. So I knew I had to complete a college.
I'm sorry, but to me, this is the definition of a strong Black woman. Tell me your thoughts in the comments.
Education in order to support myself and my children. I embarked upon a search to find a good college, and California was a target state.
There was a consensus back in Mississippi that Byron De La Beckwith had done it.
Yes.
You knew pretty soon afterwards that he was the person, even testimony on some people's part, that he was bragging about it.
Oh, of course. He was very, very braggadocious about it. He relished being on television cameras. We have to remember, too, that he ran for lieutenant governor at the time that the prosecutor of the first trial ran for governor. They were not necessarily a ticket, but they were there together. He received a hero's welcome, and it was also during the time when one would expect him to receive a hero's welcome. That was very, very difficult to deal with. When I was on the witness stand testifying, the governor, Ross Barnett, walked in the courtroom, paused as he looked at me, turned on his heels, went over to Beckwith, shook his hand, slapped him on the back, and sat down with him. It sent a clear message to the jurors and others that this was a hero, this was a man that should not be touched. He should be glorified. And I knew from the evidence that had come forward initially, and particularly with the fingerprint on the rifle and the wound over his eye where the scope had hit him, and other evidence that this man had done it. And then he added to that by bragging about it without specifically saying that he had pulled the trigger.
After 2 unsuccessful trials, why did you continue to believe that he would be brought to justice?
I wasn't sure whether he would be brought to justice after 2 trials, but I knew I could not
Be honest in the comments. Why do you think it took 2 trials just for this woman to get justice?
give up. I could not stop in my search for justice in this case. I loved Medgar dearly. I respected so much what he had done in his very short life. Mississippi needed to change. I simply pursued by asking over the years when I would go back home, which was every year, sometimes 2 or 3 times. What have you heard? I need some information. Maybe something can be done. Everyone except my children and my present husband said to me, "You're making a mistake. You're living in the past.
Let it go."
Let it go. I could not turn it loose. I was obsessed with it. And the last 5 years the last 5 years have been very, very difficult in terms of, one, persuading the district attorney that this case should go forward, hoping to find information that had been lost. And of course, when we reached a point where there was nothing else that they said they, meaning the district attorneys, could do without the transcript, I told them, keep working, because I have the transcript, and I personally delivered that.
You had kept the transcript yourself.
Oh, yes, a 3-volume one.
Yeah. And also there was the gun.
There was a gun.
You had access to because?
No, I really did not have access to the gun. The gun was located in the home of one of the officials whose father-in-law had been a judge, and it mysteriously appeared. I have still not been satisfied as to the whereabouts of that gun and when it...
Why did it mysteriously reappear?
I think basically because the young assistant district attorney, Bobby DeLauder, was convinced that he had a solid case. It's about the age of my eldest child, a native Mississippian, but as he became more involved in this case, he too became obsessed with it, and it appeared.
Did you have anything to do with this HBO special called Southern Justice, The Murder of Medgar Evers?
I did, in the sense that I was interviewed by the producer, a 1-hour interview that ended up being 5 hours. And that interview led to using...
I'm going to try my hardest to find that video.
Excerpts of that interview for the production. I'm very pleased that HBO has committed to airing this. It's a very important document. Because there are people, your audience and other audiences, who were too young to know Medgar Evers, who were too young to know of the struggles that we went through. Some young people that I speak to say, "You mean to tell me you really could not try on shoes? You really could not go to the library?" You know, I mean, just very simple things to them that were so important then, and especially registering and voting. And that it's so important for them to have that background, and important for those of us who were a part of that time to really look seriously at where we are today and rededicate ourselves, as Medgar did, to bringing this country along, dragging, screaming, or willingly, at a point where all of us can do whatever we can do based on our abilities.
Roll tape. Here's a clip from Southern Justice, The Murder of Medgar Evers, airs July 11th on HBO. Here it is.
Any race, color, or creed on the whole earth is justified in using any means that they can to separate themselves entirely from any other race, color, or creed in the world, and live and rule as the ever-living God would have them of that particular race, color, and creed to live and rule. Now, that's a real good answer. You can't get a better answer out of Webster than that.
That would include lynchings. It would even include
killings. You're trying to put words in my mouth.
I'm asking you.
I just gave you an answer.
I'm asking you, sir.
I gave you the answer implicitly, completely. You speak English better than I do.
That was Byron De La Beckwith,
yes,
a man convicted of assassinating your husband. When he came up on the screen, you turned away. Is it hard for you to watch him, or do you look at him as the symbol of what drove you and left you unsatisfied until he was convicted?
Well, that person has no idea what motivation he provided for me to go after him. So I do see him that way, but I become nauseated at times when I see him, and I have not reached the point where I feel pity for him, for his sick beliefs, and I will call it that. I, however, am over the hatred that I felt. I didn't realize that I still had those feelings in me until I saw him alive in the courtroom for the first time. I worked through that because the picture is so much larger than that one person. He was just a part in all of what has happened. So I became a free person when the verdict came in. After that, he was inconsequential.
You know what's amazing to me, someone who grew up in the South, it is the extraordinary sense of, and this reminds you, and 1,000 other things remind you, racism is throughout our society, and in California, and in New York, and in North Carolina, and in Florida, and in Mississippi, and Alabama, and Georgia, a lot of other places. But it is that seeing this, and seeing him, and seeing you here, it reminds you of the extraordinary sense of how difficult it was to get up every morning and what you had to face as an African American, couldn't vote, and all the odds that were against you, to make your way in the world. Let me translate that forward, really, as I close this. How different do you see Mississippi today? I remind you in the audience that the Secretary of Agriculture, Mike Espy, is a former congressman from Mississippi. We have a number of
I want you to answer that question as well. How do you see Mississippi today? Be honest in the comments.
African-American mayors in Mississippi. Things have changed. How much have they changed for you? And what pride and would Medgar say about where Mississippi is in 1994?
I think Medgar would be very pleased with where Mississippi is today, but he would challenge all Mississippians to continue to improve conditions. Because indeed, if you go in some of the back areas, the rural areas, you find almost the same thing that we did in the 50s and the 60s. But I look at Mississippi and judge it.
But that's more economic, is it not?
Yes. Well, I don't know. Certainly economics drives all of this. But there are just deep-seated feelings of hatred. But it's one thing about Mississippi in the past and today. If you are liked, you know it. If you are hated, you know it. And it's a front, and you can deal with it. To give you one example of perhaps change, the governor of Mississippi, the present governor, just declared one day Myrlie Evers Day in Mississippi. That's a little unusual. But something I'm more proud of is the fact that Mississippi now has the largest number of African American elected officials in the country. That is such a tribute, I feel, to Medgar and to others whose names are less known, who gave so much to the state of Mississippi and to the country.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's an honor to meet you.
I want you to put yourself in Myrlie Evers' shoes. And I want you to be honest in the comments. You walk into the courtroom and you see the monster that unalived your spouse. Now, I'm not going to ask you what would you do, but let me know in the comments, what do you think you would do, or what do you think would be going on in your mind?